Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you all to the Finance and Operations Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, October 12th, 2022. It is 5:12 in the Nashua High School boardroom. Ms. Johnson is here. Ms. Lampier?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Hello. Ms. Brown?
Here.
And we have Sean Smith and Dan Donovan with us this evening. Okay, so the first thing on our agenda is driver's education program changes.
Okay, so we have met with the driver's ed group. This program's been run for many years. I'm not sure how many exactly, but for many years by a gentleman named Dick Landcourt. And I believe, Sean, you've been there as long as you have?
Pretty much.
Yeah. So that's a long time. But he's finally decided to drive off into the sunset. So we do have an individual now who's one of the driving instructors, Peter Jean. He's going to take over the program. If you recall, we approved a vehicle for this program at the last Finance and Ops and then board meeting. But the program would like to put a few changes in place. So I think these are things the board should approve since they're finance related. So the first thing they'd like to do is, currently the tuition is $550. They'd like to move it to $650. So they claim that the rates are, that $650 is still lower than the other rates. I looked up 3 of the schools in Nashua. One's $825, one's $700, and one's $950. The $950 one, I think, will go pick you up at your school. The other 2 requires you to go to their site. So even though it would move up $100 to $650, it's still below those 3 programs. They want to increase the instructor rate pay. Right now it's $35 an hour. They want to pay $40 an hour for when they're doing instructing. That would be classroom instruction as well as driving instruction. If they're doing other work, like some paperwork or bringing a car to get fixed or something, it would be the $35 an hour. And they think with that rate, they can hire a couple more instructors because, like I said, Dick Landcourt, he's been around a long time. A couple of the other instructors have been around a long time. Mr. Jean will be around, and then we have one of our teachers who's relatively young compared to the rest of the crew. But they're looking to add a couple more teachers, so they thought if they could pay the $40 an hour, they'd be able to find more people. So basically, I took a look. I did a pro forma P&L, assuming that there'll be 5 sessions a year, which is typically what they run. They can handle up to 50 students at a time, but I put in, to be conservative, 38 students. So 5 sessions, 38 students per session at $650. Calculating all the costs, they should have a return of $12,000 to $13,000 a year. It's probably a little potential movement in that. And they do need to make some money because they do need to replace the cars every few years. I think they have 4 vehicles. The one they just replaced was an 08. They have like a 10 or an 11, so probably 3 years from now they'll want to replace that. So that is the suggestion that we motion would be to increase the student tuition and the pay rate for the instructors. We do that as of January 1st of 2023. Any questions?
Yeah, January 1st, 2023. Do we know how many students are in each of the programs on the other driving schools?
No, I don't know what they're, no, I don't know that.
Okay, because I think, here's my thinking, right now, with the way things are going and the economy and the inflation, I think $100 at this point is a little steep. I would be willing to go 50 and then in 6 months do another 50. I'm negotiating here, because I just see what's, the economy, the inflation that's going on out there. And, $40 an hour, I don't have a problem increasing the pay to get 2 more instructors. But I just think that the way things are, $100 at this point is a little bit, I would say, so how long does the sessions go for, driving?
There's 5 a year, so, 2.5 months or so.
Answer this question. The state requirement, my daughter, I just signed her up for driver's ed, and I had to go to an outside school because all of the spots in the school district were taken. And most of the spots, about 9 months out from whenever your child is eligible, are also taken at almost every driving school in the city and neighboring towns. It's very difficult to schedule. Sidebar, I actually think this rate increase is reasonable. It is definitely competitive. The requirement for the state is 30 hours of in-classroom training. And this might be wrong. I think it's a total of 60 hours behind the wheel, and that has to be, at least a minimum of those have to be completed with a driving instructor, and some can be completed with your parents. And there's a minimum that have to be completed after dark. So it's actually one of, the state of New Hampshire actually is one of the highest requirements for the number of classroom hours required.
How many weeks?
So most of the programs are 6 to 8 weeks, depending on whether it's a 3-day-week program or 4-day-week program. But it's a total of 30 classroom hours.
Yes, you were close, 40 hours with driving with an adult, 10 hours with the certified instructor, plus another 6 hours observing with the certified instructor.
If we were to raise the tuition by only $50, would we make enough money to keep the program going?
The 14,000 or so we'd make would drop down. The idea was to increase the tuition and the rate, the driver's rate at the same time, because it's key to have if you don't have the certified drivers, you can't run the programs. So a few years ago, we didn't have enough certified drivers, so we only ran like 3 sessions because we couldn't run 5. So if you can't run the session, you can't collect the tuition, you can't. So, that was kind of the reason we did both. We want to try to find a couple more drivers. We can get through probably the next two sessions or so, but come June 30th, when these other drivers are leaving, then we really only have 2. So and it takes time to get certified. So
if we raised it $50 now, and then by the end of the school year, we brought it up to the full $100, and we could get the certified drivers, we'd get to where we want to be, the $650. Could that work?
it could, but then you're going to have 2 sessions where it's 600, and then it's going to jump to 650. So, could do it. I'm not sure how much just for a couple sessions. Because it's not like, you take it once, right? So are some kids going to wait to save $50? I doubt it. I think it's more when are they playing a sport? Are they, got some other clubs or plays or things like that? They sort of fit it in around when they have time.
I think you're adding everything together. And given the economy right now with the cost of gas and everything else, the question is it the right time to really raise anything? Or do you give a slow increase? Or you don't do an increase at all? I'm not going to support this, so if one of my fellow board members want to make a motion on this, they can do it. And I'll wait till, again, like this, to go to the full board, and I'll think about it between now and then. But, it's the inflation out there. It's killing everybody, and I don't know if this is the right time, to start raising, especially when everybody gets the new assessed values, and their taxes go up even more.
I have a suggestion. What would this make this more appealing? So Do we have a process in which people, because I think you can make payments, correct? Like you can either pay it all at once or you can pay like 3 installments or something like that?
I'm not 100% sure. I
Okay.
think most students do pay in advance.
Yeah.
You can probably request that, but I'm not sure.
So what I was wondering is if there's, so again, since I seriously just wrote this check a few weeks ago, the school that I went to, they actually gave you a $50 discount for paying the full fee in advance. I think you can through the schools, I don't know, and I don't know what the number of increments was. You could do a payment plan also. Would you be comfortable with raising the full $650, raising the full $100, but giving an incentive for people to pay in full as opposed to waiting? I mean, so as opposed to paying through a payment plan?
Well, we don't know if they have a payment plan or not here.
Okay. All right, well, I'll make the motion because I do think that this rate is still, I think it's about $50 under even the least expensive driving school in the area, which I think is reasonable, and I like that. So I move to increase the student tuition and the pay rate for instructors as of January 1st, 2023.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Nay. Motion carries. The next item on our agenda is the CTE Computer Purchases.
Okay, this one, I received some information from acting CTE staff, and they would like to use Perkins funding to purchase computers for the CAD program, the engineering program, and the business program. So they went out and they did get bids. The business computers, the low bid, which is IT Insiders, that's the same price that, if you recall, IT goes out every May, gets bids for the year. So whoever bids low for a basic laptop and a basic desktop wins the bid for the year. IT Insiders won that bid. That's the price, the $625 price. So for the business computers, that's the same computer that most teachers and staff have. For the CAD and engineering computers, that's a more powerful computer because of the programs that it runs. I think if you know anyone that works at BAE or anywhere else, their computers are a little more power and can run various programs much more efficiently, but they cost more money. So they went out for bids on that. The lowest bid did come from IT Insiders also, but it's $1,449. So the CTE program would like to purchase 24 of the machines at $625.50, and 42 at the $1,499 for a total of $75,870, money coming from the Perkins grant.
Any questions? No? Okay. So I'll move to approve the purchase of 66 computers for CTE programs at the cost of $75,870 from IT Insiders funding from the Perkins grants.
Second. Second, sorry.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Next thing is Franklin Street payment and parking lots.
Okay, so the Franklin Street building, we have a purchase agreement with them that we're paying over a 4-year period. We made the payments are due in September of each year. We recently just paid the third payment, which was $250,000 per the installment agreement. And so the amount that was left, the way this was scheduled, we paid more upfront. We paid years 2 and 3, $250,000 each, and then the final year we paid $725,000. Now, the initial plan when I put this together with the church was to use funding from the middle school project bond to pay for this, a bunch of this final payment of $725,000. Last year, when I came to find out how costs were increasing on the middle school project, I said, probably not going to be able to get the money there, which turned out to be true. But we did approve last year an escrow of $600,000 towards this. So we took some last year's leftover operating budget money, we put it in escrow, so it's still there. So basically, that gives me 600 of the 725. If the building's moving along quite nicely, and I know Mr. Smith and Dr. Andre will plan a tour for the board. I think they're working on that. But yeah, it's made a lot of progress. But the one thing left, when you go over there, we have 2 of the parking lots, and there's 5 lots that are there. 3 of them have been redone. The 2 that we have not been redone. And they're in pretty bad shape. They got some big holes. Sean's, the plowing guys took a look and said that's going to be a heck of a job trying to plow that thing. So we took a look. Sean went out and got some prices. I reached out to the church and said, how about we do this? Instead of paying you $725,000 next September, I'll pay you $700,000, so $25,000 less in a month or so when it gets, assuming this gets approved, and then we'll take that extra 25 and we'll put it towards the parking lots to do the paving on the parking lots. So they met, they talked about it, and they agreed to do that if we can make the payment within a month or so, which we should be able to. So basically, like I said, so it's the 600 of the 700 I already have an escrow from last year. I'll take $100,000 for right now. I'll transfer it out of the out-of-district tuition line. If that line gets bigger, we have another account that we could supplement that. If we need to find that $100,000 later in the year, which we might, then I have a way to get that money from one of the special revenue funds. So, but for now, that's the plan, to transfer that money over. We'll make the payment, we'll get the lots done, so when the teachers go back and the staff goes back, they'll have reasonable parking lots. And the other thing about the lots, they're going to angle them so it's a lot easier to get in and out. A lot of people now park straight, so it's very difficult when there's a lot of cars in the lots to get in and out. So that's the suggestion. So the motion would be to accelerate the payment to the Grace Fellowship Church, make it 700 as opposed to the 725. We'll use the 25 for the maintenance, and I'll make a transfer of 100. So I think it sort of works for everybody.
Okay, so the 600,000 is going to be coming from the deferred maintenance escrow account, right? That's the way it's reading here. And 100,000 to be transferred from the OOD tuition FY23 operating budget.
Yes.
Okay, so that's how you want the motion to read?
Yes.
Okay, any questions on this?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
You know, my question is just that, like, if the $100,000 from the out-of-district tuition, isn't that money earmarked for kids in special education? I mean, wouldn't that be money that could be used in district for kids?
Well, it's specifically put aside for the kids that go out of district. So we budget that on a separate line item for the out-of-district students. Typically, that line overruns its budget. Last year, it didn't.
Yeah, I remember.
And it was shocking, but since COVID, the number of residential out-of-district students has dropped. Now, we did get one in the other day that just moved to town that is a residential student, so there's going to be ebbs and flows on that. But the 100,000, if we need it later in the year, if there are more students, the costs go up, then I'll find it somewhere else. It's just hard to find money now because we're just starting the year. So to find 100,000 is kind of hard. That's one of the large accounts. So they may require another entry later on, but for now, we can certainly manage it for the next 6-7 months.
I was looking at the budget for special education, and I noticed that, you know, the special education budget more than much more than half of it is used for out-of-district placement. And it concerned me a little bit that the money for the kids that are in district is so much less than the kids that go out of district. And it's just why I'm asking about this. I mean, is this money, I don't know exactly where the funds came from. Is it earmarked for kids with special education, or is it something that is I mean,
Well, the out-of-district students, we try to keep all the kids in district, but there's certain students that have specific needs that we can't fulfill for whatever reason. Those are the students that go out. We try not to do it. Do they cost more? Yes, they do. If they're residential, they can cost $300,000 in 1 year. So, yeah, does that cost a lot more than the typical student that stays in district? Yes, it does. But like I said, we try not to send them out. We try to meet their needs, and we meet the needs of most of the students. I'd say right now, I think we have about 1,900 IEPs, and we have about 70 that are out of district.
but are you sure that you're meeting the needs of the kids in special education in the district?
I would say yes. I'm not the special education person, but
Dr. Andre, did you want to say a few things?
Yeah, I think really I'd be more than happy, quite honestly, if we sit down with Director Bagley and kind of go over it, right? Because it's, when you start unpacking what we need, a lot of the budget internally goes to staffing, right? And salaries. And so then what's in the IEP, and to Mr. Donovan's point, like the IEP is that legal document that drives the services. So it's really hard to put a formula on it, but again, most of the budget is staffing. But I'll be more than happy if we want to sit down with Director Bagley to go over the ins and outs of what's in the budget. But at the end of the day, when that IEP team makes a decision, we are obligated to fund that IEP. And to Mr. Donovan's point, so that means if we have to move line items in order to meet that, or what gets written into our IDEA grants, that's the important. But that IEP is our legal document that we're obligated to fund. So it's kind of that ebb and flows, but once that's written, we need to fund it. So it is hard to say at the end of the day, though, are all those students being successful? And almost to last night, what does success mean to each student? So we're doing the best that we can right now, and our educators and our IEP teams are hopefully supporting the students to the best of our abilities, but also the students' abilities.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to get kind of off topic. Every time it comes up, I just want to do what I can to make sure that the kids are taking care, are getting what they need. So thank you.
I'm just going to ask, since it was brought up tonight and it's a finance thing, could we have maybe Ms. Bagley come in and just give a slight overview to us on the needs, so we can see money-wise how it's being dispersed? Because when you look at the budget, the pie chart on the budget, it's about what, 85%, 80 to 85%, which is salaries and benefits. And whatever's left, if it's 15% left, that's how it gets dispersed throughout the budget here. The most expensive thing in the budget is your employees. And there's no getting away with that. And every time, you've got to remember, every time when you give 4 or 5% increases in salary, that chips away more and more on the supplies and needs that you're having in the classroom, and people don't understand that. That you got to get that balance. You can pay high salaries, but then less money is the pie. Instead of 15% and go to 20, 10% what's left in the classroom. Okay? So it was a good question.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions on this? Okay, so I'm going to move to approve a prepayment of the final installment to the Grace Fellowship Church of $700,000, funding to come from $600,000 from the deferred maintenance escrow and $100,000 to be transferred from OOD tuition FY23 operating budget.
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, the next thing on our agenda is the bicentennial HVAC controls.
So we'll turn this over to Mr. Smith.
Okay, thank you. As you probably, there was a memo in your package, hopefully you've got a chance to review it, but as you probably know, most of our schools are, the HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, air conditioning. Those are controlled by computers, and that's just the front end piece. And in plant operations, we can monitor temperatures and whatnot at each of the schools where those are installed. Most of our schools have them, a few of them do not. I listed those in the memo. Main D, Birch Hill are two of our upcoming schools that we're hopefully going to renovate. We can add those, we'll be able to add those to the list. For various reasons, we've standardized on a couple of suppliers of control systems, for spare parts, for familiarity with systems, for training purposes. So there's a lot of reason to standardize on just a couple. I've tried to keep it so that there's also competition, so every time we bid this sort of thing out with a construction project, we can at least get a couple of bids for different systems. It tends to be territorial, so if you're saying I'm just going to pick system XYZ, there's usually somebody for XYZ for New England. So somebody from Pennsylvania can't come up here and bid on that. So it's somewhat controlled that way. So we have, over time, standardized on control technologies and Siemens. Frankly, I don't want to besmirch anybody, but I've had much better luck with CTI. We've had a couple of meetings with the other company before the Sunset Heights renovation a number of years ago, and expressed some concerns, and they promised us the world, and the world didn't come out. And we've been rather unhappy with a lot of what we got. The components they provide are fine. You know, a lot of these companies, Honeywell, Siemens, Johnson Controls, they all have good stuff. As with most companies, though, it's the maintenance, it's the people behind it that make the big difference. So we're seeing CTI is very responsive to our needs, and the other company is not. On top of that, Siemens has just informed us within the past half year, we knew it was coming, but they reinforced it recently that the software that we've been using for their that supports their software is no longer supported, has to be replaced, and a lot of the panels that they use in the schools we have installed also have to be replaced because those are also not going to be supported. This is not unusual. What happens in business, it's not just HVAC controls, it's a lot of things. But we're seeing it as an opportunity to shift over to CTI, which has been the more reliable for us. So I'm recommending that we go with the front end just for bicentennial at this point. I want to make sure the system does in fact work, that we're not tearing out all of the Siemens components within the school at bicentennial, but we're installing a front end that will communicate with all those pieces. And the cost to do so is $26,714. If that goes well, I'll probably be back later this year or next year to talk about the other schools. We have the Siemens systems at Amherst Street, Bicentennial, Dr. Crisp, and the school administration building. So just so you can picture when somebody from like Dan's secretary calls and says, Dan's hot or cold, I can sit there in my computer and say, oh, Dan's been nice to me, I'm going to, or he hasn't been, I'm going to turn that heat way up on him. Or I can turn it up in a projection booth too, remember that. But no, we've had, well, just this past week, we had some calls from HR. They're saying we're cold, you know, please decrease the temperature. So we can, with a couple strokes on the computer, we can fix that. So that's where HVAC systems, control systems come in. So it's my recommendation that we accept, there's a proposal attached from Control Technologies, and it's my recommendation that we accept their proposal in the amount of $26,714 to decommission the old Siemens controls and install a new N4 control system. Funds will come from the school district's deferred maintenance account.
Anybody have any questions? Ms. Brown?
So until we complete the project at the other schools, will we be running 2 systems?
Yes.
So, and how do you, how long do you think it'll be before we can transition to getting them all? I mean, that's going to be, got to be more convenient for you all for maintenance.
Yeah, it's something I wrestle with because I do want competition. You know, if you just say to CTE, okay, you're going to have all our business from now on, that's not necessarily a good thing. So I'm still wrestling with how to deal with going forward. But I do know that we've had some not great experience with Siemens, and I just want to go one school at a time. As I said, I look to transition. I want to see how this works with Bicentennial. If it goes the way I expect to, I'll be back later this year for the other 3 schools. We also have it at Sunset Heights, but that software and the panels that they installed are more recent. They don't need to be replaced right now, so we have some time on that one.
And when you do the work at Main Dunstable and Birch Hill, do you have a plan on which system, or is that going to be a totally different thing?
It's a good question. Haven't got there yet.
All right, thank you.
So it's CT or Siemens. Is there any other companies?
There are other companies. Those are the 2 that we have currently. For example, when I first got here, Honeywell it was in several of the schools. For various reasons, we found that their maintenance department was not as good as what we'd like to have. So we transitioned away from them. Johnson Controls is another one out there. So my staff and I need to do a little research and see if there's somebody out there that's acceptable. We'll have to talk to other institutions.
So you only reached out to CT right now to do this? Or did anybody else give us any quotes?
No, I didn't. Again, we're just happy with CTI.
CTI?
We're at a point where we need to do something because their software and their panels are no longer supported.
Any other questions? Okay. I'm going to recommend that the Board of Ed accept the Control Technologies proposal in the amount of $26,714 to decommission the old Siemens control and install a new N4 control system. Funds will come from the school district's deferred maintenance account.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, that was easy.
Thank you.
The next thing is the grant proposal.
Okay. Each year, as you're very familiar with, we go through the budget process and the board approves the operating budget. We also have significant dollars associated with grants we get from the federal government. Now, during the budget process, we do have a tab in the budget book, and we give you information on the grants that are currently in place. But the grant cycle and the operating budget cycle are different. So when we're asking you to approve the operating budget, let's say in March or April, we have no idea what the grants will be for the same school year coming ahead. So typically what we've done is we've given you information on the grants that are currently taking place at the during that part of the school year. So what the city has been including the grant numbers in their budget book. So they suggested maybe it's a good idea that come each fall, we bring forward to the board to let you know what the grants will actually be for this year, okay? And these are what I'll call the significant grants. There might be a grant for $25,000 or something that pops up. I didn't put it on the list. So here's a list of, and these are federal grants. We receive them every year. The amounts change, but other than the amounts changing, we do get them. For example, Title I, that's for those 5 Title I schools. This year, it's $4.5 million. That's high. Typically, it's in the 3 millions or so. There's the Title II grant. That's used typically for curriculum and coaches and things like that. That this year is going to be about $800,000. That typically runs between 4 and like 8 now. Title III is ESL, immigration kind of grant. That's typically a smaller amount this year. It's 194. It's been around there for a while. Title IVA, that's a relatively new grant. That's related to PD and curriculum things. That one, I think it's new. It's about 3 years old when we first started getting this, so it's another funding source that came available. The 21st century, that's the Title IV-B they call it, but it's 21st century. So we have 2 grants with them. We have the elementary and the middle school grants. Sometimes we just have one, so you could basically kind of cut that number in half. But we have both for this year and for the next year or two. IDEA, that's the special education grant. That's the grant that was going to pay for all of the things. And obviously it doesn't, it doesn't get quite close to all of the things. That's $3.5 million. That's a little bit high compared to average, but not too different. The Perkins grant, that's related to the CTE programs. That number's also a little higher than it usually is. And then the adult ed grant, and that's $185,000. So in total, those grants are $10,889,000. And also, since people ask the question all the time, well, what about the ESSER grants? The ESSER grants aren't on this list because they were granted previously. The ESSER 1 grant, which was $3.2 million, that spending is over now at the end of September of this year. It started March 20th, or March of 2020. The second ESSER grant, which is $12,973,000, that was granted in June of 21, and it runs until September of 23. Most of that is currently allocated, not spent, but allocated, which means we have plans to spend it. And then the third ESSER grant, which is where the money for the construction at the HVAC at the 2 schools, that's $29 million. And that was given to us in September of 21. We have until September of 24 to spend. I will be bringing forward, probably not next month, but the month after that, sort of, here's what we spent ESSER 1 on, here's the final spend, here's what's fully allocated for ESSER 2, and here's what's planned for ESSER 3. And I'll try to categorize that. We've had a couple right-to-know requests on that, and so I'll try to put it together so it's simplified. I could just print the grants out and give them to you, but gets a little confusing because the same types of expenses are spread in different activities throughout the grant. So I'll try to summarize that, and I'll bring that probably to the November, December meeting. But I think tonight, if we can, the city accounting department would love if you could approve the grants, the federal grants to be spent this year.
Any questions? Ms. Brown?
Do you need board signatures on any of these to file
No.
or anything like that? Okay.
No, it's typically me and/or the superintendent that approves things.
Thanks for going through them and letting us know what they were. Some of them I wasn't sure about, so appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay, with no other questions, I'll move to approve the FY23 grants from the federal government.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, now we're down to the FY23 September financial report.
Okay, we'll run through this quickly. It's only this is through September, so it's 3 out of 12 months in the fiscal year, but only 1 month of the school year, and the school year spend is obviously a lot higher than the summer spends. So if we look quickly in September, you'll see the wages full-time, $9.8 million. That's a big number, but that's because there are 3 biweekly pays and 5 weekly pays all in the same month. So that only happens one other time because we pay, Biweekly's 26 times, there's 12 months times 2 is 24, 2 months have to have 3. September's one of them. So that's why that number is higher, and if you look at this report as we roll along, you'll see October will be back down around 6.5, 6.8 or so when we get there. Same for the wages part-time. The overtime, I have to update my overtime list. I have not done that yet, but I will do that for next month. My guess is most of that overtime is related to some of the last-minute construction things to get schools open, but I'll have a better sense next month. The wages seasonal went down. That's because the summer help for Plan Ops is now gone in September, so typically what's left is temps that they hire, not necessarily seasonal any longer. The wages per diem, those are for substitute teachers, but those are the substitute teachers, the continuing subs, okay, the ones that they're not in the contract per se yet, but they're continuing subs, so they're paid through payroll. The $9,000 is the quarterly payment made to the board members. Additional hours, you'll notice that's a negative number. The additional hours, the numbers are large in July and August because that's where we charge all our summer school programs. They go through additional hours because they're not necessarily salaries, they're outside salaries. Some of the numbers that should have got charged to a grant got charged to the operating budget, so this was a transfer entry where we took money out of the operating budget and charged it to the grant. Because Title I pays for summer school for some of their students, and then we had some of the Power Scholars was paid for by the ESSER funds. Okay, stipends, those stipends are mostly the head teacher stipends and the head psychologists. And retirement separation pay, I have not completed that list, but I'll sort of put it together. I always compare it to the list I put together each February when all the teachers put in their retirement notices, so we get a sense of how much money that we need in the operating budget, and then I compare that to the actual payouts. We do have a practice here for teachers that if you need to show us your first paycheck from the retirement system to prove you retired before we pay you your severance. Because what we don't want is you retire, take your severance, and then next thing you know, you're working over in Hudson. So.
Go ahead, Ms. Brown.
For the stipends, does that coaches and clubs come out of there as well?
They'll be in there, yes. We haven't made any of those payments yet, but they'll be on that line. Okay, fringe benefits, like I said, those are all allocations from the city based on payroll dollars. Professional and technical services, pretty straightforward. The medical services, 324, I think that's a mischarge. That should probably go to medical supplies. We'll fix that. The staffing services, the 71,000, that's the ESS, the company that's getting the subs. So that used to be all paid through our payroll, so it'd be up in the payroll accounts, but we moved some, we have to fix the budget part, but that's what that is. The new HR director, Brittany, did meet with ESS today and sort of got an update, so we'll get some information on how they're doing.
Okay, good, because I was going to ask that.
Yeah.
You know me.
No, I do, but I think we all want to know how that's going.
Exactly.
Okay, other than that, pupil support services, that's the OT-PT services, because we use outside vendors for that. Contract services are mostly Sean's and IT's and services they've signed up for. Property services, I haven't sort of, as we get a little further into the year, I'll compare the electricity, heating, gas, water this year to next year, to the previous years. But we are lucky that we did lock in that electric rate I know you said you were happy with 13 and a half. We locked in at like 7 and a half.
Sure, better than me.
Yeah. I have one at 8 personally, but it's going away in a month, so I have to now pay about 18 to get that's the lowest one that's out there that I can find.
I should have sent a notice around to everybody about direct energy back before August when it all went up.
But I didn't want to change it then because I had 8.
I know. Pay me now, pay me later, right?
Exactly. Okay, maintenance accounts, those are moving along fine. Down to the other services, telephone, nothing too much there. The ones I have circled, the printing services, 55,600, that's 13,000. We, all the schools get together at the beginning of each year. There's certain forms that most things are online now, but there are still some forms that are printed. So we'll do one large purchase of all the various forms the schools need. So you'll see a big number there typically in September, and then you'll see a big number towards the end of the year. Because they buy in bulk, it's better that way. And then transportation services, you can see those bills starting to come in. We keep a separate spreadsheet on that, tracking to make sure that all the bills are getting in and getting charged to the right place.
Question on that.
Yes.
When we negotiated the contract, we locked in the gas into the contract, am I correct? So it can't go up on us the way
Can't
it's...
go up on us.
Yeah,
It's
that was another
it's
good
their
thing.
issue. Yeah, we were going to lock a rate, and then they just said, we'll worry about the gas.
Hey, you can't beat that now, right?
Nope, it's a
Hey,
good deal.
Good deal.
Okay, and then that's the tuition out of district line that we're going to sort of borrow the 100,000 from for the payment, and then if we need, we can supplement it later in the year if necessary. Supplies and materials, looking down, you can see educational supplies, a big number for a month, 154,000. That's due to the beginning of the year, right? Teachers getting a lot of the supplies, schools. So that number will be big September, October, and then basically the schools they'll spend some, but they'll hold on to towards the end of the year and then see if they need more supplies or equipment or whatever. Other than that, the supplies accounts look fine. Towards the bottom there, you have the various, publications, media, periodicals, things like that. The indirect cost allocation, that's from the grants, that's sort of the revenue we get back to the district. It's a percent, it's an overhead rate, about 2.5%. Computer equipment, you can see we spent most of that money July and August, and now it's a smaller number because we buy the equipment in advance of the school year. So the same goes for software. Typically that's an annual subscription price. Most of them come due in July and August. Then other equipment, not too much spend on those at this point. Capital outlays, that 81 group, that's the $250,000 we paid to the church for year 3 of the installment. And so that's pretty much it. I don't know if there's any questions on this, or?
So we have this breakdown of the operating budget, but can we get breakdowns of the grants too, as the year goes along, how the grant money is spent?
There's not a canned report that we have for that. If you just wanted to see each grant, what I could do maybe once a quarter is say, okay, here's the total amount of the grant, here's what's been allocated, and then here's what's been paid. That's listed on each grant. I could do that.
I kind of would like to see what it's been allocated to. I mean, if that's possible.
Yes, I could give you the grant, okay? So you can read the grant and it'll tell you. The thing about grants to remember is there's not like Title I grant that will be spent on certain things.
Yeah.
You can't shuffle the money around and you can't take money out of your operating budget. It's got to be, in addition to, not to supplant or take away from.
If I could look at one of the grants, would it come with a list of saying what you could spend it on? That way I wouldn't be able to understand?
Yeah, the grant has sort of a narrative, So it'll list the activity and say, okay, we're spending, let's say, $200,000 here for computers, or we're spending $100,000 for a teacher of some sort, or, so I can certainly print those out and you can read them.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know when I'll have them read by.
Well,
I hope
no-
it's not a test.
No, deadline.
I would like to see them, though. I'm trying to understand more as time goes on. Thank you.
So if I may, Mr. Donovan made a good point. So those grants are restricted in what Title I can be used for, Title II, Title III. And the other key phrase that he said, it's to supplement, not to supplant. But if you actually go to Ms. Brown's, the curriculum meetings, so other than, yeah, right. So in the curriculum meetings, other than, so some of the Title I, Title II, IDEA, there's a big portion of those grants actually are still salaries and benefits, right? And so then everything else, there's activities that we have to write for. And most of it is, even in Title I or Title II, is around professional development or resources that gets approved with like a good justification and a dialogue at the curriculum meetings. And so there's some stuff that we could read on our own, right? But also, if you wanted to see it in action and get the justification, there's a lot of the subcommittees that's really, we allocate, same thing to Ms. Johnson's point, like 15% of that budget is actually into activities to a certain point. So we'll be more than happy to, again, educate or have those kind of meetings. But if you really want to see those grants and actions of where it's going to, as Mr. Donovan said, in a couple of those, it's around professional development. But really those activities and really get into the details is in a curriculum instruction and assessments subcommittee meetings. But at any time, if you want to come in, we can go over any of those grants. And sometimes you just need a law degree to actually see what the restrictions are.
When you mentioned staffing, it made me wonder, is it only Title I and Title II that can be used to pay for staffing?
No, so even IDEA, so in there you saw it's like $4 million. So we have staff in there as well.
Oh, that's great.
So, and again, it's all kind of restricted of what they can be used for. Yeah, so even Title III, you can use it, but it's only a couple $100,000. So if you have 3 FTEs in there goes your whole grant. So we try to not put too many staff in federal grants.
Thank you for clarifying, because I was going to bring up Title II with curriculum. If you go to a curriculum meeting, and people who are watching, I don't think they watch very many of these subcommittee meetings, but that's where you'll see a lot of these grant monies being spent. Like here, we see a lot of the Perkins grant being spent on the CTE programs. So they are specific, but good question. You know, you come up with these good questions, but that's the only way you learn, is by asking the questions. So is there any other questions on the transfer report, on the financial report, excuse me? Nothing? No. Okay, then we'll go on to the transfer report for August 2022.
Okay, only about 5 transfers, which is good. First one is a transfer by the Technology Center, CTE, and they're simply moving money from equipment to supplies and moving money from from supplies to pay for professional development of a course for the engineering group, the teacher specifically. Next one is the athletics. If you haven't been over to South, take a walk over there, see the brand-new track. It's black, but it's very nice, and it's pitched, and hopefully it's going to be in great shape. So when we did the track, we ended up being able to add another pit for the long jumpers. So now you can go both ways. It'll go faster, and if there's a strong wind one way or another, you can just go one way. So they needed a new pit cover, so Lisa took it from the dues and memberships to take care of her new track, or our new track. And then the next one is also from Nashua Athletics. The price for the pool rental, we go to the Y for the swim team, swims at the Y. They increased the number of hours this year. Last year, they had put up the rate per hour. This year, the rate per hour stayed the same, but they have, I think because they might have one more meet or something like that. So the cost for the contract went up. So she took that from supplies. And the next one's sort of an odd one. If I had seen it in advance, I'm not sure I even would have put it in. But basically, if you look at this, it's Elm Street Middle School. All they're doing is moving it from various, it's Scholastics, you know, that little magazine, if you remember. I didn't think they still existed, but they do. And they're just moving it from various programs within the school to put it in one place in the school. So it's really not, it's in the same account. And the last one, this is sort of what we've been seeing for the last few years. Difficult time finding enough special ed staff. We've had for years this psych intern program where we get, most of the students are from schools down in Boston, but we pay a stipend. It used to be like $10,000, it went up to about $15,000. But that was a way that these psych interns would come to Nashua because they get paid. They need to do this as part of their program to graduate, but they weren't going to come up from Boston to Nashua, but if you offered them some money, they'd make the ride. So that's what we did for years. This year was the first year in forever we couldn't get any interns. According to the head psych at the district, she said that other school districts started doing what we do. So now you can get paid and drive 10 miles instead of get paid and drive 35 miles. So we weren't able to get any of those. So that's, we were taking that money and we're moving it into cover the costs for other positions we couldn't fill. So for example, a teacher for the visually impaired, unable to find that position, we've had to contract that out. So typically what we'll do is we'll find some areas in the payroll budget. If we don't have that spot filled, we'll move it to the contract services. We'll hire them for a while. Keep in mind, though, the contract service is a lot more per hour than hiring the staff yourself. So this will cover it for a while, and then we'll have to, you know, maybe we'll hire somebody, maybe not, but. So that's what that transfer is. I think you saw a bunch of those last year where we couldn't get, we're still short certain special education positions. It's just very difficult to find them. So we're supplementing those services with contracted services.
First of all, I want to make a correction here, because I said the August 2022 report, because that's what it says on my paper here. But on the agenda, it says the September transfer report. So I want to just correct the record on that.
Correct.
Is there any questions on this? Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just wondering, you know, it's $76,000 here for the contract services, and you only mentioned one person that's being hired. I didn't know if there was more people, if the whole $76,000 would go to this one teacher of the visually impaired, or is it anyone else?
If we were, it'll probably cost at least that.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is a lot, man.
it is.
Does that mean, so if you hire this, if you contract services with them, does that mean she'll be in the district full-time?
She could be. A lot of times, the contracted service people don't want to work full-time. That's one of the reasons they contract. So they'll say, I'll work for you 3 days a week.
So the $76,000 isn't even wouldn't even be for a full-time position?
We'll use it towards a number of these.
Oh, okay. All right.
And it's sort of a starting point for contracted.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Any other questions? I'll move to accept the FY23 September transfer report.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Is there anything else on the agenda?
There is not.
Ms. Donovan?
I have nothing else.
Okay. So, motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we are adjourned at 6:14 PM. Thank you, everybody. Good meeting again, like always.